following are two amazing stories where a soul was able to send a message to their intended family by appearing in a dream or a vision, telling them they will be shortly arriving. The messages that they send to their future parents are called announcing dreams. Walter Miller, Michael Wright. In the 1960s, Walter Miller lived in a small town in Texas, and in high school he was dating a young woman with the name of Catherine. Walter liked to draw and paint and would often do drawings for Catherine. By the late 60s, after being together for 3 years, they planned to get engaged and then marry. One evening in the summer of 1967, Walter and his friend Henry Sullivan had been to a dance in a neighbouring town and were driving home from the dance when Walter fell asleep at the wheel, wherein the car ran off the road and crashed. Walter passed immediately after breaking his neck, and Henry Sullivan was fortunate enough to survive with just a few scratches. Almost 1 year later, in June of 1968, Catherine married a young man by the name of Frederick Wright. Catherine had not been married very long when Walter started to appear in her dreams, telling her that he was not dead and would one day come back and draw pictures for her, as he'd previously done. Catherine believed the dream to be a genuine message from a late boyfriend, telling her that he would be reincarnating. Walter had a sister called Carol, and at the time of her dream was pregnant, so Catherine assumed that Walter would reincarnate as a child of Carol's, but that was not to be the case. A few years later, Catherine became pregnant with her first child and gave birth to a baby girl. Then in 1975, she had another child where she gave birth to a baby boy, who she named Michael. The thought that Walter could reincarnate as a son never entered her mind until one day when Michael was only 3 years old, mentioned the name Carol Miller, who was Walter's sister. As if this was not enough of a message to shock Catherine, her son later gave a detailed account of the car accident that had cost Walter his life. Michael had told the story to a friend, where he told him that he was in a car with a friend that went off the side of the road, and then the car rolled over and over. He said he lost his life when his door flew open and was thrown out of the car. But that was not the last description that his son Michael would give after the car accident. We said that he remembered the glass in the car shattering and also later remembered being carried over a bridge. Michael was also able to name the town that had been coming from after the dance before driving on the highway and having the accident. As if that was not enough proof that Walter had reincarnated as a son, Michael also mentioned that he and his friend had stopped at a restroom on their way home and said that his friend's name was Sullivan, and even correctly named what Henry Sullivan's nickname was. Michael was also able to tell them where Walter lived and where Henry Sullivan lived. Catherine knew that all of these facts were true regarding Walter's accident, and Michael also described what happened after he died, where the ambulance that was taking Walter's body away to the morgue had crossed over a bridge, just as Michael had described. It appears obvious that after Walter had lost his life, he was able to observe his body being placed into the ambulance and being driven over the bridge, as he was now in spirit. It appears that Walter also had genuinely appeared in Catherine's dream, telling her he would be coming back, but he did not warn her that he would be coming back as her son. Blanche Bautista. In 1900, Signora Bautista and her husband Flanita lived in Rome, where Signora gave birth to a baby girl that they named Blanche. At the time, Signora's husband Flanita was a captain in the Italian army and had a Swiss servant named Mary, who could only speak French. When Blanche was 2 years of age and ready for bed, Mary would sing her a French lullaby, and Blanche eventually learned the lyrics to the song. Unfortunately, Blanche passed away in 1902 when she was only 2 years of age, and Mary then left the family and returned home to Switzerland, no doubt shattered by the sad event. 3 years later, and no doubt time had helped to heal some of her emotional wounds, Signora Bautista was pregnant again, and when she was just 3 months pregnant, Signora Bautista had a vision where she received a message that Blanche was returning to the family. It was August 1905, and at the time of the message, her husband Flanita was in the room with his wife when they were both lying in bed and fully awake. Suddenly, his wife told him that she'd seen a figure of their deceased daughter Blanche, and the vision showed a happy child that spoke to Signora and said to her, "Mama, I'm coming back," and then the figure disappeared. 6 months later, in February 1906, Signora gave birth to a baby girl, of which they again called Blanche, no doubt keeping the name of their deceased child. Why give a baby a new name when, as seen in a vision, believed the previous child was returning? The reborn Blanche had the same features as the old Blanche. If the parents needed any more proof that the deceased child returned, was when at the age of 5, the new Blanche started singing the French lullaby that had been taught to her by their former French servant Mary. Lullaby that Mary had taught the old Blanche had not been sung or heard for 9 years, and 5-year-old Blanche had not been around any French people or heard any French tunes in all of her 5 years. When her parents asked Blanche where she had learnt the French lullaby, their child responded by saying, "Nobody taught me, I just know it by myself," and then continued to sing the lullaby that Mary had taught her in a previous incarnation. The case of Blanche Batista appears to show that people can reincarnate with the same family, and the absolute proof is when Blanche was able to sing a French lullaby that she had not been taught in a short 5 years, as the reborn Blanche and a physical resemblance was further proof that the child had transferred from one incarnation to another.